really interesting turn of events have occurred. I went to sell my motorcycle this morning to a guy who was wanting to buy a project for his son, and believe it or not, he was like, well, it's not worth as much as you're asking for it, which I said, okay, you know, that's fine, I understand, I'll hold on to it, no big deal. And then he said, well, I have one option, are you open to trades? And I said, okay, sure, what do you have in mind? And he said, well, hey, jump in my car, we'll drive up the road here. And of course, me being the trusting person that I am, I said, no problem, jumped in the car, and we drove about maybe 10-15 minutes away from where we were meeting. And he took me out to this big field, and he said, hey, I've got all these cars, is there anything out here you might be interested in? So I looked through the cars, there was a couple of old C10s, a couple of like S10s, lots of like Chevy, Chrysler products, things like that. And then I noticed off in the corner there was a Jeep forward control, and anybody who knows Jeep forward controls know that they are impossible to find. They're super rare. This one is probably a early 60s, late 50s, it's hard to say. I'll have to look at the VIN tag and all that fun stuff. No title, no paperwork, no nothing, just bill of sale, which is fine, I can get a title made. But sure enough, he said, yep, I'll make that trade all day. So now I have a trailer attached to the truck and I'm headed back over there to pick it up now and tow it home. It's pretty rusty, but hey, isn't everything rusty in this world? We'll see if we can resurrect it and get it back on the road. It'll probably need a full engine overhaul, just because that's every old vehicle, but it's a normal 4-cylinder Jeep engine, so shouldn't be too tough to get it done. I'm really excited because I've always liked Jeeps, and this forward control is super cool in its design. I'll take some photos of where it is before I move it and as I'm loading it, that fun stuff. But I'll check in later and show y'all kind of what it all is all about. So basically, when we got into it, the bottom corners of the body had some funky rust in it. I thought about replacing the corners, but you can't really buy them, so I just cut off about 5 inches of the corner, which allows for, of course, better wheel clearance to the ground. It kind of gets it a little bit closer to the bed, so if I roll over something, it's a little bit better. And then I'm going to be cutting a bottom chunk of the door off, not quite where that cut is, but right where that hiccup in the metal is. We're just going to cut that off, so we get a little bit better clearance on the front, and we can open up that front gap. Now, of course, we've gone ahead and removed the floors right near the chassis. Got into the engine. Yeah, that goose is cooked. There's no ability to replace that or repair that. Probably, but it would have to be removed. It's missing a piston, some other things. So there's the opening through the floor where we'll just kind of close it in with the patch panel. Did the same thing on the other side. And then we've started on the driver's side floor. Steering column's in there, so I didn't want to get into that until we were ready to remove the steering column and all that. I probably have to move it around a couple more times. So we'll just kind of let that be for now. We'll still have to weld the door skins back on. Hammered out some dents in the body. It's just a little beat up. And out of all the ones I've seen, this is probably a pretty bad, one in pretty bad shape. But for what I'm wanting to do, just turning it into a, a shop truck, it's gonna work out perfect. We're gonna actually put a Dauntless V6, which was never offered in the forward control, from a 65 Jeep into this. It's a tight squeeze, and I think for emissions and that sort of thing, they never put this engine in this vehicle. So we're gonna have to move the radiator up forward a little bit, do some twisting and pulling to make it work. But the Dauntless runs pretty cool, and again, I'm not gonna be driving in traffic or anything like that. At most, the car will drive 20 miles at a time. So we've got the engine removed out of the forward control. It was a 4-cylinder Jeep motor that had a piston out of it. Usually when a piston's pulled out, it means it probably overheated, burned a bearing in the bottom end. There's no telling. I'm not going to even mess with it. I've been looking at a Dauntless V6 as a replacement for the motor. However, the transmission is a different version, which is not going to butt. Now, I have both the transmission and transfer case for the Dauntless, but there's one big difference. This particular transmission has a side shift mount on it. So I'm going to have to find out if they make some sort of an adaptation for it or something, because I won't be able to shift unless it's this style transmission. So we'll find out soon enough. And remove the bed panels in preparation to weld in some new floor and seats on either side. Kind of tried to straighten it out. I'm going to try to salvage as much metal as possible. In reality, there's not much to salvage. The roof needs to be welded back on. The seam where the top meets the actual edge of the roof has come apart completely, so the roof's just kind of floating there. So we'll get that done. I got the floor partially welded in, kind of just mocking it up. We're going budget on everything, so this is an old hood out of another Jeep. We have front valence that we still have to work on, and then there's still a couple rust holes where I'll make an extra panel to kind of go up the side. I did put the battery connection together and get lights and dash lights, so that's good that all that works. We're going to be doing 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch steel at the base of each of these pockets. Still working on trying to get with the kid to get the engine so I can get all that started. And basically it's just cut, weld, sand over and over again until we're done. But rust is pretty extensive. Luckily, welding in new panels is not so difficult. This is kind of a cool one. The leaf springs are completely snapped in the leaf pack. I'm gonna have to either put on new leaf springs, well obviously new leaf springs, but I was looking at possibly doing independent suspension, but it's gonna get nearly a foot lift on this Jeep, so it's really gonna be standing tall. And you can just see how this rust, this is the actual floor here. We're gonna remove the bed completely, and I'm just gonna clean back as much of this as I can. We'll rust treat it. And it should be fine for the future, but it's in pretty rough shape. We'll be putting probably 4 6x8 sheets of steel back into the bed. And there's where the wheel carrier would have been. Just rust. As you can see, it's a Turbo 350 that we've got going on here, this little guy, and it's going back to a normal automatic tail shaft. We're going to do an Advanced Adapters tail shaft. It's about that long, and it's going to adapt the Turbo 350 to the Dana 20, which is hiding in there. The Dana 20 is a pretty burly transfer case, and it's a pretty compact unit, so I definitely want to use that. I did look at a couple different transfer cases, but I had a Dana 20 laying around in good shape, so I'm going to use it. As you can see, there's tons of room in the engine bay. This is a 4-cylinder engine bay, so it has a very small doghouse, but that Dauntless V6 snugs in there quite nicely. Now, we did do massive plates here for the motor mounts. It's 2 1/4 inch walled plates welded together with gussets and then welded to the frame. And that motor's not going to go anywhere. No matter how hard I try, I can guarantee that's not going to snap off anytime soon. Now, the new thing that we're run into is the rear axles. Now, with the Fc150, if you know anything about Fc150s, they have very short wheelbases, which is fine, no problem there. What I'm actually going to do is take this wheelbase here and push that wheel backwards almost to the back of the car. I have to redo the bed anyways, so it'll allow me to shift that back about 4 inches. A center diff instead of a offset diff. Not sure actually why this has an offset diff, because this is the original transfer case. Nope, I see why it has an offset diff. That makes a lot of sense. On the trans adapter to the Dana 18, so we have not yet put our cross member in, just because I want to make sure that the transfer case can mount on it. That Dauntless V6 fits in there like a charm. Lots of room in the doghouse for our air cleaner, and then of course our oil filler and our coolant pod. We also got the frame stripped off. Got our 200-pound weight out of the back. We'll be cleaning up the frame. Got our leaf springs off. We're actually going to be unbolting these leaf springs and shifting them back about 4 inches all the way to the tail end of the frame. And we'll gusset that and make it nice and strong. And then of course we got our Dana 44 out and prepping it to be cleaned. New brakes, all that fun stuff. Fc150 update time! Today we've got the whole back and driver's side part of the frame stripped off. Basically, we're just cleaning it up, making it look all pretty. Right here there were some crazy bung welds on the frame, and I sanded all that smooth, filled it with welds, and made it look all pretty again. Still have to work on the back end here a little bit. As you can see, we're trying to fix all the damage from before. Won't be too hard, just kind of welding up where it was riveted only. This piece of metal probably could be replaced. It's not so torn up, but somebody welded an extra bumper onto the back. What we may end up doing is cutting this off completely and extending the frame a little bit so I can shift my axle rearward. I won't make that decision though until we get to our transmission pulled. So, looks like Data 44 front and rear. So this is going to be a pretty burly off-roader. That's why I want to open the wheelbase up a little, just to allow for a little bit more stability. And not a ton, just about 4 inches, so just enough.